Hello and welcome to everyone on the line. We're so glad you could join us for today's webinar, Be the Difference, Integrating the UN Sustainable Development Goals into Your Business. This event was organized by the United States Fashion Industry Association, representing brands, retailers, importers, and wholesalers based in the US and doing business globally, as well as our friends at Lensing. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our presenters for the day. Our moderator today is Julia Hughes, President of USFIA, and our speakers are Carrie Bannigan, founder of the Conscious Fashion Campaign, Lucia Brigham, Chief of Office at the United Nations Office of Partnerships, Timo Schwensfire, Director of Marketing Communications at Messi Frankfurt, and Trisha Carey, Director of Global Business Development for Apparel at Lensing. My name is Shannon Brady, Communications Coordinator at USFIA, and I would like to remind attendees that you can submit questions using the question header on your webinar control panel. Just type your text into the box and hit send. If we run out of time for a live Q&A session, our presenters will follow up with you after the presentation. And if for some reason we experience a technical difficulty and lose audio, please refer to the chat box for further instructions. As a reminder, all registered participants will receive an email later today with a copy of the slide deck and a recording of today's session. So without further delay, I will hand the floor to our moderator, Julie.
Thanks a lot, Shannon, and thanks to everybody who's joining us today. This is such an important topic and one that's very close to my heart. I just want to kind of kick us off again, reminding us about what we're going to talk about today. The UN member states adopted the 2030 agenda that laid out the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, as a blueprint to achieve a more sustainable, just, and prosperous future for all. And I feel like those goals are even more valuable and important today. The goals identify specific targets that relate to poverty, inequality, climate, responsible consumption and production, the environment, prosperity, peace, and justice, with the goal of 2030. The entire world has a stake in the success of this ambitious plan, and today we're going to talk more about the plan and about how companies throughout the industry are participating, contributing to the SDGs, and looking forward to how we can continue to work together. Next slide, Shannon. So Shannon introduced all of our presenters today, but I want to give them a chance to say a few words themselves about how their journey, their approach to SDGs, and anything else that they want to share. We want to make sure everyone shares where they are today, since we're all from different parts of our homes talking to you. So let me start with calling on Carrie.
Hi there, thank you so much for having me. I am Carrie Bannigan and I'm the founder of the Conscious Fashion Campaign. I usually reside in the US, but today I'm calling in from the UK. I will get further into about my work with the SDGs in a little bit, but I did just want to share the Conscious Fashion Campaign looks to engage the global fashion industry to commit to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And with that work, we really try to drive change through advocacy, education, and engagement of the industry stakeholders. And I look forward to furthering that information in this discussion shortly.
Thanks, Carrie. Lucia, sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. So Lucia Brigham here. I'm here on behalf of the United Nations Office for Partnerships. And first of all, I wanted to thank and recognize the work of the US Fashion Industry Association and Lensing for curating and putting this webinar together, as well as thank all of you who are listening for finding time in this very busy and challenging times. So, to introduce our office, the UN Office of Partnerships, we are based here in New York and at the UN headquarters. And our job is to serve as a platform for effective partner engagement and to support the UN system as it connects with the private sector, civil society, activists, foundations, nonprofits, and other stakeholders like yourself in our drive for success on Sustainable Development Goals. So the goals are in the very core of everything we do. And we basically serve as a gateway or broker between the private sector, non-profit foundations, and everything else that is happening with the UN system, with the objective to connect, strengthen our expertise and resources to ensure that the goals become a reality. I will speak about it a bit in a few minutes.
Thanks so much, Timo.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks for organizing this very exciting panel. My name is Timo Schwenzfeier. I'm representing Messe Frankfurt today. Messe Frankfurt is one of the largest trade show organizers worldwide, and the #1 when it comes to textile related trade shows all over the world. With our shows, we are covering the entire textile value chain, and I'm holding 2 positions. First of all, I'm Director of Marketing Communication for the textile shows on a global level, and I'm a show director, which means I'm responsible for one dedicated show, which is kind of a top-notch trade show on sustainable fashion called Neonit in Berlin during Berlin Fashion Week twice a year. And yeah, we're working together with the Sustainable Development Goals since more than 1 year now, and also together with Lenzing. So I think there will be some insights today.
And then let me turn it over to Trisha. And I just want to say, how pleased we have been to have a series of webinars that we have co-sponsored with Lenzing that focus on a variety of sustainability issues. So Trisha, let me turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Julie. And thanks for being a partner in putting all of these webinars together. So my name is Trisha Carey. I handle global business development for apparel at Lenzing. I'm calling in from New York, and I'm glad we have this time to connect, especially during this crisis. I think it's so important that we have the time to talk. Lenzing transforms trees into fiber. We make viscose, modal, and lysa, which we brand as Tencel, and they're derived from certified and controlled wood sources. We have 7 manufacturing facilities around the world in China, Indonesia, the Czech Republic, Austria, UK, and the US. Some of our global brand partners using our fibers, many who are also members of USFIA, include Eileen Fisher, Gap, H&M, J.Crew, Levi's, Patagonia, and more. Sustainability is at the core of our strategy, and we value the foundation that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals provide.
Thanks. Next slide. So let's kick off with Lucia talking a bit about the background and the SDGs, why they were established and why they're important.
Okay. Thank you. At this point, if this was not a webinar, but a true meeting, a true event with people in the room, I would ask my favorite question and say, can you please raise your hand if you have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals, you know what they are and are using them in your businesses, in the way how you conduct your life. But we don't have the luxury, so I will assume that people might have heard about them, but they are not fully understanding why they are relevant, especially in this time. So the sustainable development, I will start from the scratch, and if there are questions that if people would like me to dig a little bit more deeper, please let us know and we will address it in the later part of the presentation or of the webinar. So the Sustainable Development Goals, they were created or endorsed in 2015 by all UN member states. What they are is they present this unprecedented platform to mobilize global public and trigger change. There are 17 most pressing challenges of current times that the member states have agreed on as a key areas that we have to address, we have to change, we have to collectively work on to ensure that the future of our planet and of our world has actually a meaningful, sustainable system that is implemented. And what The goals came about as a very broad consultation process between the United Nations and the private sector, academia, non-profits. So for the first time in the UN history, we went out and really engaged all various constituencies. We wanted to make sure that the goals are relevant to all, to businesses, the foundations, NGOs, academia, everyone. And we came up with this quite complex 17 goals that are further divided into 169 indicators. But we feel that they represent very well what the global audience or the global public really want to see in the future of our planet. And I think there was a really helpful slide in the beginning of the presentation which showed all the goals. And in case that, I don't know if you can go back to that, Julie, but the reason why these goals are so special, so unique, is that they are universal. They apply to all communities. They are not just designed to work in least developed countries, but they are relevant to everyone. Everyone in New York City, in the West Coast, in Central Africa and Europe, everyone can understand why they are important. And the second important aspect is that they are interconnected. So we are talking about how increasing education and engagement of women in the workplace, how does it impact responsible and sustainable consumption and production patterns. Then the next very important aspect of the goals is that they were designed to engage everyone. So the whole point is that we need to work collectively and find how we can together contribute with our expertise, with our knowledge, with our network, with our resources. How can we together help each other and make a difference? And that is even more underlined by the current pandemic, by the very unprecedented crisis we find ourselves in. One of the most important messages that are coming out from the World Health Organization and from the UN leadership these days and other health public institutions is that this is a problem that cannot be solved by one entity, by a certain group of entities. This is a global, true issue that has to be addressed and worked on collectively. And that's, I would like to make one more link between the coronavirus crisis and the SDGs and the Sustainable Development Goals. We have been thinking, like, what are the key essentials when we are looking at where we are? Aside from addressing the health crisis, we started looking at a longer-term recovery, the social and economic impact of the crisis, and how can we find the way to rebuild and rebuild better. And the consensus among the UN ecosystem is that we have to use this Sustainable Development Goals that have been endorsed and started being used as a platform, as a framework for recovery. Would you like me to continue on the linkages between the textile sector and fashion industry and SDGs and coronavirus response, or is it a question for later?
Up to you, Lucy, if you'd like to continue for a little bit more, and then we'll go on and hear from some of the other presenters, but happy for you to go on a little bit for the linkage.
Okay, well, let me just go a little bit deeper on the linkages between the fashion industry and the goals. So it is obvious that the fashion industry is, there are various and strong linkages of how the industry impacts the goals, the framework of the goals. Aside from being one of the largest employers of the world in the world. It also is one of the top users of the natural resources and has such a strong significant impact on the environment. So what we have been doing with within the UN system, we have created the a UN Sustainable Fashion Alliance, which is a group of UN entities that are engaging textile and fashion industry and trying to formulate how best we can engage such a powerful network, such a powerful sector to help us achieve and move closer to the goals. And one of the aspects is educate, and we need to make sure that we share awareness. We help the fashion industry leaders to understand that the goals are them for use to be as a tool for mapping where they are, figuring out where the gaps are, finding out what the connection points are within the industry to really make a difference. And what the UN does, we serve as a normative and standard setting body, and also as a convening body that clearly in current times is more of the virtual than real, but we have this convening power. And what we expect from what we are asking the fashion industry to do to be the creative, innovative driving engine that helps us identify the solutions to the problems and help us educate their supply chain members and audiences about why the goals matter and how everybody can play their role. We can go into specifics, but just last thought in this segment, I wanted to recognize how the panel as curated today, it's a perfect prototype of collaborations that we are hoping to snowball. So we have Lensing, the very powerful global private sector entity that understands the power of SDGs and uses it, integrates it in their business models. And then we have Timo, the Messe Frankfurt, which is a publicly owned company that also came to a realization that there is a keen interest and there is a need to educate their constituencies. And then we have Carrie, the very innovative entrepreneur that decided that going to leverage the network within the fashion industry and create a nonprofit to educate the audiences of how best we can collectively make an impact. That's it.
Thanks so much, Lucia. That's perfect. And also a perfect segue to call on Carrie to share a few words about how Conscious Fashion Campaign is supporting the SDG goals, the agenda with the apparel industry, and maybe if you could also say a few words about what you see as the most critical SDGs for fashion companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Conscious Fashion Campaign is supported, and we work directly with Lucia's office, the United Nations Office for Partnerships, where we really want to drive the engagement and create a bridge between the fashion industry and the Sustainable Development Goals. Because just picking on something Lucia said that was so key there, the goals are actually for everybody to use. The 2030 agenda cannot be achieved if countries, governments, cities, businesses, and even global citizens don't come together and collaborate for that change. So one of our main goals with the Conscious Fashion Campaign is we seek to champion the fashion industry. It's a very influential sector, and we believe by coming together and really being able to champion the innovators in that space, we can address these world's most pressing issues that the SDGs are trying to highlight to us. And again, we do that by really urging the conveners and the prominent industry stakeholders, especially within the event space, to see what they can do to drive education, advocacy, and engagement. And one of our biggest things is for them to really look at how, as an industry, we can not only implement responsible operations and logistics, but how does that also lie with marketing, responsible messaging, media, what is going on when we start talking about impact and sustainability, and also just making sure that as we run our businesses in the fashion space, we try to be as mindful as possible of social, economic, and environmental impact. So through that, actually, I'm very pleased to have Timo here representing Messe Frankfurt here on the call. There's a core example of one of our partners where we decided to collaborate over a year ago and see how we could start with Neoneat, which is their Berlin-based trade show that really focuses on sustainable brands, but how we could start there and see what would make sense to then roll out the Sustainable Development Goals throughout the rest of their portfolio globally. And that started with the education, the awareness, and now going in more to tools, the community action, and so forth, which Timo can share later on as well. With all of that, we then ended up having activations and partnerships with other industry leaders and stakeholders in the US, the UK, Germany, France, Netherlands, and China. And what has been absolutely phenomenal is to see the positivity, the innovation, and how people really do want to not just see, but actually create systematic change within the fashion industry. And one of our asks at the Conscious Fashion Campaign is how we can integrate the Sustainable Development Goals in what makes sense. Everybody is at different stages of their business as well as their sustainability journey. But what we look for is how do we get this into their business models? Can we incorporate the circular production solutions? And also those that have the platforms and the mediums to highlight the key innovations so that we can scale the success stories, because without that, we're not going to be able to accelerate and enable the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And you noted there about what is the most critical. I'm going to be biased and say all 17. However, the reality is, first of all, for us at the Conscious Fashion Campaign, the most critical of the SDGs is partnerships, which is goal number 17, because without partnerships, we are never going to be able to scale as a movement and be able to get the work out there. And I think the wonderful thing is about the fashion industry is the creativity and the speed to innovate with those that can. And then there's also so much support going on now. And without that, we wouldn't actually be able to have shifted the needle to drive this as a global movement. To look then at the rest of the goals, for us, we believe they all interlink and everybody has something that's most important to them and also realistic and makes sense for their business. The fashion industry is very complex. It's not going to be dealt with solo or in isolation to unveil what's going on within brands. It always comes back to the creative collaborations. 3 that I do want to point out, though, that I hear and believe is important for the fashion industry, and we see this a lot, whether it's the panels, the education, or what people are doing to use the SDGs in their reporting and their auditing. I would say goal number 6 with the clean water and sanitation, goal number 12 with responsible consumption and production, and goal number 13 with the climate action. They are key to what is going on. Lucia touched on how the industry is one of the biggest users of our resources. So we really need to look at what that means amongst water, to then how we can do better with our consumption, and then how that leads to creating change and doing better for our climate action. And I'm excited later on, I'm sure Trisha will be sharing some of the incredible stuff that Lending is doing to become at the forefront of what can happen for climate action by integrating the SDGs into your business model.
Thanks, Carrie. That's a terrific introduction. Let's turn it over now to Timo and talk a bit about what Messe Frankfurt is doing. So you announced last year that you'll be working together with the UN Office of Partnerships and with CFC to support the SDGs. So can you talk a little bit about what, as a trade show company, Messe Frankfurt is doing?
Yes, absolutely. And I fully agree with what Carrie said, that it all started kind of with number 17 with the partnerships, because that's what it's all about also for us, that we were setting up the partnership. The funny thing here is we talk a lot about cooperation, collaboration, where actually I met Carrie was at competition show. It was remote in Los Angeles. I was there to check it out actually, and I met Carrie, and we kind of run into each other, and it was like, yeah, actually we should do something together. And this was like a really nice coincidence. Even I'm pretty sure we would have met a few weeks or months later anyway, but this was a great starting point, and it just shows how important it is to have this physical get together. Even right now it's not happening anymore that much, but it's a must that it happens also in the future. And for us at Messe Frankfurt, as a trade show organizer, you can see it here on the world map. We are, when it comes only to the textile related shows, under the umbrella of our so-called Texpertise network. That's how we call the summary of all the textile related shows. We are organizing every single year more than 60 shows all over the globe, from Argentina to the US, now next year also in Colombia, by the way, back to Europe, like in France, in Germany, in Russia, in China, in Japan, also in the meantime in South Africa and Ethiopia. And every single year we are welcoming more than 23,000 companies from the textile industry, and more than 600,000 trade visitors, like B2B only. And for us, this was one of the main reasons why we thought it would be a great collaboration tool to use the SDGs and to make them more visible to our to the people which are visiting our shows, to give them an idea of what is the background story behind the SDGs and how they can make use of it, how they can really work with that. At the beginning it was, and maybe it's still about the education a lot. It's about making it visible at every single trade show, making it or make a statement about it, like what kind of goals the people can use, how they can get related to them, and also defining formats, how to talk about it. For example, within a panel talk, or making a masterclass, or doing an audio podcast. There are several tools, and as you already said, last year, end of last year in December, we were announcing this global partnership that we will do it on a global base within the Texpertise network, working together with the United Nations Office for Partnerships and Conscious Fashion Campaign and the SDGs actually. And what we are doing right now is defining the way we are going to make the SDGs visible at every single textile related trade show all over the world. So our goal for the next 2 to 3 years is that the SDGs are a relevant factor, a relevant topic at every single show, no matter if it's in Addis Abeba, if it's in Tokyo, if it's in Moscow, if it's in Atlanta, you name it. And we want to make sure that our audience, which is coming together at the shows, that they have a better understanding, or that they will get a better understanding of what the SDGs are, and then on a next step, or the next level, how they can use them for their business purposes. And I think this is kind of a roadmap which should help us a lot to better understand how to make the SDGs more visible and more usable in the future. One thing I need to mention at the moment right now is, of course, due to the coronavirus pandemic situation, we have kind of a tricky situation, because actually we had to postpone a lot of shows this year already. I think at the moment it's like about 30 shows we had to postpone. And for example, in Germany, it's not possible to organize trade shows until the 31st of August. So for us, that means we are kind of on a pause level. But on the other hand, now we have the chance to think through the way we want to showcase the SDGs and some other formats as well, a little bit more than we would have had the chance in the past, because normally we say after or at the end of a trade show, there's the next trade show coming. So it's like kind of a race. And now we have a little bit more time to really think it through. And we're in a good contact with Lucia and with Carrie and with the teams to make it happen as soon as we can organize trade shows all over the world again.
Thanks so much, Timo. That's terrific. And let's turn it over to Trisha to talk a little bit I think many of us have heard Trisha talk about what Lenzing is doing on the SDGs, but if you can go into a little bit more detail, Trisha, about the sustainability strategy at Lenzing, I think that would be terrific. And a great graphic, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I can't take credit for it. So, but it is, I think, gives you that snapshot of what we're working on. And since Lenzing fibers are used in various product categories, not only apparel, but also in home, nonwovens, technical textiles, packaging, and more, it gives us a wide breadth in the market. And over the past 3 years, we've been integrating the SDGs, focusing on 3 main areas. First of all is circularity. So SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production, as well as SDG 14, life underwater. So by using our closed loop processing for tensile lyocell, as well as the Refibra technology using cotton scraps to make new fiber, and the biorefinery concept. With the biorefinery concept, pulp and fiber production are energy intensive processes. For Lenzing, we contribute to SDG 7 by improving our energy efficiency using energy conversion technologies for heat and electricity, by employing renewable fuels and switching from coal to natural gas by implementing the biorefinery concept. So dissolving wood pulp production with Lenzing's biorefineries at the Lenzing, Austria site, as well as in Paskov in the Czech Republic. They're not only self-sufficient in terms of meeting their own energy, but can also supply additional energy needs. The second area is greening the value chain. So this includes SDG 15, life on land, SDG 6, clean water, SDG 13, climate action. And Lenzing was actually the first fiber producer to have approved science-based targets. Right now in the world, there are only 350 companies that have approved science-based targets. So with this, we're able to impact SDG 13 climate action. Lenzing was also the first fiber producer to sign the UN Fashion Industry Charter, and we set our goals beyond the charter to have 50% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2030. So these are some very ambitious goals that we have. The third area is partnering for change. And as Timo and Carrie and Lucia have already mentioned, partnerships is really the way that everyone's going to be able to achieve the goals. We look at this through our connections in the supply chain, as well as reaching to the consumer as an ingredient brand. We seek systemic change by working with a wide range of stakeholders and business partners along the value chain in order to raise the bar for sustainability in textiles and nonwovens industries. And we work with industry organizations like Canopy, Changing Markets, ZDHC, Textile Exchange, SAC, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, WRI, World Economic Forum, with USFIA, and many other organizations in order to partnership for change. Julia?
Whoops, I remuted myself. Let's go to the next slide. Trisha, you want to share a little bit more about from this slide about some of these things, or shall we go to questions?
We'll go to the question of what's happening now.
Okay, great. So Trisha, let's talk about what's happening now and how fashion industry is responding, particularly as we're in the current crisis.
Yeah, in our current mode, it's it's really very endearing, and all that's happening from what you see on medical responders and people who are directly impacted by COVID-19. I think overall we realize how interconnected we are, and with that, collaboration, again, partnerships become very important. And I noticed that this collaboration was happening in 2 areas. On the business sides, brands had to work with their supply chain partners and address how to slow down or halt their business, because consumer buying patterns had just changed so much with all the retail closures. And when brands demanded discounts, terms, and cancellations, we saw the apparel industry push back and use press and social media for their support. So, this really was taking the short-term impacts and looking at long-term, where will businesses be after the crisis? The other area that I saw in the collaboration was the immediate outreach of the fashion industry for PPE. Immediately, Lensing received calls from our brand partners for supply chain connections on how they could, maintain or attain materials in order to make PPE. So there were brand partners like Hanes, Fruit of the Loom, Gap, Nike, Under Armour, Reformation, who immediately started to use their intellectual property and supply chain partnerships in order to produce masks and gowns. Overall, I see that there is a resilience to forge through this and not only survive, but to really thrive.
Thanks, Trisha. That's terrific. Lucia, do you have a few comments to share as well on the response?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Trisha, and everyone. I would like to echo, maybe build up a little bit on what just Trisha said, and Carrie and Timo as well. I think the pandemics have highlighted how important it is, how crucial it is for everyone to think carefully at their business models, how they operate, and how they impact the communities they work in. And it can be analyzed from different lenses, but I think everyone understands, all the companies are thinking about the well-being, wellness, health, safety, and economic impact on their employees and on the supply chain. And we're also thinking how we have to think on how this current unprecedented crisis, like what kind of impact it will have on the future of our world. And what we have seen is I would use two or three keywords that have been most crucial, and one of them is kindness. The second is solidarity, and the third one is collaboration or partnerships, and looking how our action impact the communities that are linked to our businesses and environments. I would like to recognize, there are a couple of initiatives that UN has launched to respond to the pandemics since about 2 months ago. One of them, the probably most important one, is the Eures Solidarity Response Fund. That is a collaboration between the WHO, the World Health Organization, UN Foundation, and Swiss Philanthropy Foundation. And it's basically call for resource mobilization from the global audiences to support the WHO's work to protect the audiences, to protect the global audiences, and ensure that we have understanding what's going on and help us predict where actions need to take place. And there's been huge, unprecedented outpour of support. A lot of the companies from the textile industry and from your world has supported, and so that's just one side of the spectrum. The other amazing response is the jump to action from the fashion brands, large and small, in helping to fill the big void of personal protective gear and other medical supplies that are so essential and are saving lives. So these are just two great examples of what industry contributed with. But I would like to take it one step further and think, how can we look at the challenges posed by the pandemic and really look at it? What can we do? How does it impact our way of doing business going forward? Is it going to, what is the future going to look like? Are we going to go back to the usual, or are we going to think of the longer term impact and how can we do things better and really fit within the SDG framework.
Thanks, Lucia. I agree that's a key question. Carrie, would you like to add a couple of comments here?
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, Trisha and Lucia both shared a lot there to reference and take in, and that's fantastic. I wanted to note actually the CFDA, how they have launched or relaunched and brought back their fund, a common thread, where they are looking to distribute funds to designers that are being affected, but also they're working with Vogue to highlight stories and really show people behind the glamour. There are those that are being employed, there's the home lives, there's the health, and there's so much more that's actually affected and needs support in the fashion industry. On the other side of that as well, I would also love to mention what is going on to make sure that there is support for the garment workers. And there's 3 things I just want to mention. I won't dive into them, but you should definitely check them out. The New Fashion Initiative is running stuff with a collective throughout the fashion industry where people are coming together to create PPE and masks. You can follow a lot of that work at #MasksForAll. Also, they have come together and you'll be able to find, it's called the Garment Workers Relief Fund.org. The full name of it is actually the Garment Workers COVID-19 Relief, but that website is definitely worth checking out. It is bringing together various activations and campaigns that are going on to support the garment workers. There's the Garment Worker Center and also Remake, which is running the Pay Up campaign, which also just by that #PayUp, you can follow to see what's going on, where they are looking to ensure the livelihoods of the garment workers are protected.
Thanks so much. That's terrific. And thanks for sharing that contact info. Timo, let's turn to you. And could you maybe talk a bit about some of the innovative sustainable solutions that Messe Frankfurt is showcasing, and how, give some examples about how you're integrating the SDGs.
Yeah, actually, I mean, what is really, I would say, kind of sad about the situation right now is that when it comes to sustainable fashion, at least in Germany, or let's say in Central Europe, what we could face at Neonit in January during Berlin Fashion Week was that it was really a breakthrough time for a lot of the sustainable fashion brands here. They had a lot of good talks with conventional retailers. For example, we had ASOS, we had Galeries Lafayette, we had Zalando with us, and it was kind of a starting point. And we all thought that this year will be the year for the breakthrough of sustainable fashion. And we could see so many really important innovations already. For example, the German-based brand Armed Angels, which they're one of the most famous, iconic sustainable brands at the moment. They were running their detox denim collection. So, for example, chlorine-free washing jeans. Also, they had a lot of viscose fibers from Lenzing. Also with Tencel, for example, and they were working a lot. We could see sustainability, how to make it even more digital. That means that you can combine the 2 worlds of digitization and sustainability. For example, another jeans brand, Dawn Denim, they started with a small code on the hang tag that reveals the journey behind their low impact jeans, and they created respect codes. And this was also a very nice idea from them to not only have their own codes or their own like journey to make it only within their brand environment, but they connected their journey directly with the SDGs. And that's what makes the SDGs so interesting for all of the players involved, that they are so open, that they are so open-minded in the way they were created, that everyone can easily connect here. What we also had, for example, was a so-called From Pixel to Product microfactory, where you can see how to bring back smaller productions back to Europe, for example, and also the several steps of the microfactory, like from the design process to cutting to knitting to you name it, was connected with the Sustainable Development Goals already, to see, for example, how it could work with lower water resources or lower energy resources. So also here it was very easy for our exhibitors and for the players involved to get the connection with the SDGs directly. And we have seen so many nice examples. What I can see right now is that because the situation has changed so much, and it's really hard to focus on fashion now, that a lot of our exhibitors, a lot of companies we are connected with are now changing their production into the mask business, for example. We have a shoe brand, a very, very innovative shoe brand. They're based in Munich. They were doing, for example, the sneakers from the Will Smith movie After Earth. Will Smith and his son wearing sneakers which were kind of glowing in a way. They were made by Net2, the company in Munich, and they have now changed their production process from sneakers to create masks. And they said that they not only want to support themselves as a small family business, but they also want to support small-scale manufacturers and handicraft businesses they are working with in Italy, in Portugal, and so ever. So what I can see is that the innovation process, even at the very special situation right now, is ongoing, and that's why I really believe in the future of sustainable business solutions. And I think, as I already said, the connection with the SDGs are key to get to be connected with the movement into the future here.
Thanks so much. That's a terrific example. So Trisha, obviously we're facing a lot of uncertainty now. Stores are closed, supply chains are shut down, face-to-face meetings are canceled. We're working from our kitchen table, our dining room table. Can you maybe share a little bit more perspective about how you and we can continue to integrate the SDGs in our business?
Yes, sure. I think, even conversations like this help to raise the awareness, to educate people around the SDGs. For Lenzing, since we're at the start of the supply chain, because we only manufacture fiber, as an ingredient brand, we have a broad reach. Our direct customers are the yarn spinners, but we go through so much more of the supply chain and even reaching to brands and consumers. We support our supply chain partners, and we've even done some highlights on our Carved in Blue blog, which is what's on the screen now. That's our denim blog, where we highlighted what our supply chain partners were doing. We asked the mills specifically which SDGs they're focusing on. And I was really amazed to see the work that they are doing. And we highlighted these in little stories based on each SDG in order to give that focus. We also, for April, we have an Earth Month campaign to recognize the efforts of our brand partners with a digital countdown to Earth Day. So we're highlighting one brand a day, and then with whatever their initiative is, connecting it back to the SDGs. So we see this as a way of bringing the message to the consumer and raising that awareness of how lower impacts on the environment, and emphasizing social responsibility of our brand partners. For more information on this, it's on our website, tencel.com. So in the current climate, there's also many tools that people can look at, and maybe we'll talk about that some more.
Thanks, Trisha. That sounds great. And yes, let me open it up for everyone. If there are some tools and resources that you'd like to share with the audience that you all see as most important for companies to access if they're developing their strategies for how to better use the SDGs, or maybe trying to enhance what they're already doing with the SDGs.
Julia, can I jump in?
Please, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I would like to just add 2 quick points. One is that we are always looking for, and we need, especially in the situation, some positive examples and stories from what the companies are doing to address both the pandemic, the coronavirus in their communities, and also on a larger, longer scale, the SDGs. So for us, for the UNOPSO partnerships, one of the key roles is that we bring together stakeholders and highlight the positive stories. with the objective, like the Messe Frankfurt commitment and Lensing and Conscious Fashion campaign, with the objective to inspire others, to connect people together, enable the collaboration, and inspire others to follow suit. And so that's one thing I would like to throw out there. And the second thing is, like in response to COVID, we had launched a number of collaborative platforms. One of them that might or might not be relevant for this group, but I would like to mention it, is the SDGs COVID Data Hub, which is basically a platform that enables various private sector stakeholders, nonprofit, and UN system statistics division of the UN to share all the relevant tools on data and information on what is happening in various communities and national and subnational level, and help all various stakeholders to understand how does the pandemic impact their specific region they work in or they are based in, and figure out the way forward from there. So I will share a link to that hub after the call.
Thanks so much, Lucia. We'll definitely share that with all of the participants on the call. Carrie, are there any resources you'd like to share?
Yeah, also just to add to what Lucia was saying within the UN ecosystem, I get asked often about this, and people, maybe members or not, there's the UN Global Compact with their tools, the SDG Compass, as well as the SDG Action Manager. Then on the other side, looking more so at industry, there's the CFDA. Although a trade association, they also have a lot of sustainability resources, toolkits, guides, and so forth on their website. And then also online, there's the digital platform Common Objective, which really looks to provide education, connections, and business. So there's also a great one to look at too.
Oh, thanks. That's terrific. Timo, any resources you'd like to share?
Well, what I would like to share here to be not only online, but as soon as possible, make sure that you join the several trade shows all over the world, not only made by Messe Frankfurt, but make sure that you go to the textile related shows, because there you can get in touch with the real people in the real world. So make your bases online, but then as soon as possible, make sure that you check out the shows, because this is where the real world happens and where we can do maybe not handshakes, but at least we can see into each other's eyes.
I think we all are looking forward to that day very much. Trisha, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. One tool that I think is very useful for the textile and apparel industry is a report called Threading the Needle that KPMG put out in 2018 with Textile Exchange. This was led by Caterina Conte, and while it might have been a little bit ahead of its time, I think it still is a very good, useful tool to emphasize what's some of the low-hanging fruit that we can work on together in the apparel industry. I also think by looking at what other companies are doing, for Lensing, we released our sustainability report on March 21st, which was actually the UN International Day of Forests. And we have a lot of information in there that we're willing to share. So I think, people don't have to reinvent, they can collaborate. Sustainability and the UN Sustainable Development Goals are really, ways that brands are happy to talk about. It's not a competitive nature, it's really a collaborative way.
Thanks so much, Trisha. That's absolutely great to add, and the KPMG report was terrific. I know we're getting short on time, so I want to give a chance for each of our presenters to have some final comments as we wrap this up. So why don't we go back in reverse order, and Trisha, I'll let you kick this off.
Okay. Yeah, right now we're facing so many personal and business challenges like we've never had before. And there really is not a roadmap for what's to come. We're used to dealing with how we manage through every season, but now we're going to have to reinvent and revolutionize the way we do things. And this is where the SDGs are very important as a foundation. When I think about where I started in 2020 in January and what I thought was ahead, And I kept saying to myself, this is the decade of action. And I still believe that's very true right now.
Thank you. That's great. I agree. Timo, how about you?
Yeah, when we had the honor of having Lucia with us in January in Frankfurt at Heimtextil, the trade show for home textiles and contract textiles, we were referring to the roaring 20s we have ahead of us. And despite the crisis, I really still think that the roaring 20s are coming. I think sustainability is already has seen the breakthrough. I do remember like 10 years ago, we were talking about sustainability as kind of a trend, but it's not a trend. It will not go away. And I'm pretty sure that within the next 5 or maybe 10 years, every single company within the fashion industry has to have their very specific and unique way of sustainability. Otherwise, they will vanish, I guess. And what is really great to us is that with the SDGs, we have a roadmap where we can always make sure to check for ourselves, are we still on the path, and what kind of framework we need to define the way of sustainability actions we want to focus on. And at the end, if you don't want to make the full power at the moment, you can just pick 2, 3, 4 actions which suits your personal or your business understanding best. And I think this is the big advantage we have with the SDGs for the next decade, for the Roaring 20s.
Thank you, Timo. Carrie, do you have any final comments and thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, thank you to yourself and to Lensing for putting this together. Just to even echo there what Timo was saying, this is meant to be the decade of action. This is our moment to no longer just think about the ideas, but actually look what we're going to do to move forward. Sustainability is here to stay. And if this pandemic has taught us and teaching us anything, it's that collaborations, we're all in this together. There are no boundaries, borders, or divides. And also it's very important that we look to how we can see impact. As again, it's not a trend. And also it's very important that we can look to the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals as this roadmap to recovery. And whilst there's that to look at, I think we also need to be very aware it's showing and exposing what also has been going on in the fashion industry that is not acceptable. And now is our time to really look at the unsung heroes and remember that you're going to be remembered and your brand and what you do and how you act in this moment of need.
Thanks so much, Carrie. And so, Lucia, we're giving you the last word here for a final comment.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to thank you, Julia, because you have put together this amazing panel of people and experts working outside the UN system that are indeed experts on the SDGs. So I think what I would like to underline is that the only way forward for us is to some back to normal reality is if we collaborate and innovate, as well as share what we have learned. So these are the key principles, and the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm so glad that it echoed in everybody else's remarks. It is not only it's not only the UN agenda, the agenda endorsed by the UN, but it's a common language for all of us. And as Timo mentioned, in January we met, and it feels like a century ago. It was a different reality, but we have a decade of action ahead of us. We have 10 years to figure out how to jointly achieve the goals, and how each of us can add the value and authentic voice that will provide that will help us to find the way out of this the crisis to a better reality that the goals are aiming to. So let's work together and build back better.
Thank you so much. I mean, I want to thank all of you for participating today, and certainly what the pandemic has shown us and is showing us is how interconnected we all are, and we need to move forward together. The SDGs are a support for doing that for sure. I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, who will do our wrap-up comments here, and look forward to hearing from all of you and keeping in touch as we move forward and seeing you all in person soon. Shannon.
Thank you, Julie. So in the interest of time, we are not going to do a live Q&A session, but if you did submit a question during the live broadcast, our panelists will follow up with you. On that note, we are going to conclude today's webinar. Thank you again to all of our speakers. And as a quick reminder to attendees, you will receive a follow-up email containing the slide deck and a recording from today's program. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any additional questions. You have the contacts of our panelists from today on this slide, and you can always reach out to us at USFIA by emailing us directly at info@usfashionindustry.com. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to hosting you at the next USFIA event.